Week 4 explores another section of the ADIME note, the PES section. In the nutrition care process, we identify this as problems, etiology, signs, and symptoms. When a patient is admitted to the hospital, she or he states what is bothering with them. This becomes an initial impression of the medical diagnosis, and the physician eventually confirms, clarifies, or changes the impression to state the actual medical diagnosis. Similarly, when we interview our patient, we make an initial impression of food and nutrition related problems. As we talk through the details with the patient, we may discern that there is one or more nutrition problem. This becomes our diagnosis, the nutrition diagnosis. From here, we state what the problem relates to. For instance, the problem we diagnose is, let's say it's inadequate energy intake, which we discover is related to lack of appetite. Or another problem might be food and nutrition related knowledge deficit. They don't understand. And that's related to their disease or a new diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. The phrases I'm using come from a very specific list of standardized terminology contained within the Blackboard folders under Problems and Etiology. Let's take a quick look. So scrolling through the nutrition diagnosis section, we see further down the page this diagnostic terminology. And these list a number of nutrition problems, although this is not exclusive. There is a very lengthy list of problems that we could pick from, but I've only selected a few that we'll be using this semester. And so every time you're determining a nutrition diagnosis, it must come, this semester that is, it must come from this list. So you'll see inadequate energy intake that I mentioned. I also stated our second problem was food and nutrition related knowledge deficit. All right, now let's go to the etiology folder. And here again, we see a list of standardized terminology. And so that etiology, that our problem of inadequate energy intake was related to lack of appetite, the second one listed here. And the other problem of having knowledge deficit or not understanding the diet, that one is related to the third bullet listed here, a disease or condition. So I didn't use the word disease necessarily in that PES statement. I used the actual disease of type 2 diabetes. And I clarified that also by saying that was a new diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, which would actually explain why the patient would have a lack of knowledge and understanding that. All right. Then we've talked about the P and the E section. Now, what about the S? So we must justify our problem and etiology by use of a third component of physical data called signs and symptoms. These may be percent of ideal body weight. It could be abnormal lab values. It could be a BMI, or it could be several of these, and so on. This data affirms our nutrition diagnosis. It makes sure we're on target, we're on the right track. All right, the assignments this week will give you some practice with the PES statements. So let's take a look. In the assignments folder, the first assignment is the case study 17.2. So allow me to toggle here to our MindTap page. See if I can shrink this a little better for us. All right, and our case study is about a 58-year-old carpenter named Mr. Sanchez. It gives you some data here, but you'll see the questions. We're exploring first, what are the medical problems related to this patient? But then the second question asks, what about the nutrition-related problems? That's what we really want to get to. We'll talk through some of the possibilities of answers to these questions on Tuesday evening. Oh, I did forget to mention, as a reminder to you, that I would like you to be sure and review the Academy's diagnosis and etiology videos before our gathering on Tuesday evening. All right, and then let me toggle back. Assignment B is a partial A-dime note. So allow me to put this on the screen. Okay, and so here we see portions of the A-dime note ready for you to complete. And so you'll use that case study information, fill in the details you know. And again, we will explore some of the possible PES statements on Tuesday evening. So this will help you with your workload. And by the end of the week, you should be able to fill in the information in the white sections on this. Okay, and then we have one more case study. Actually, it's an A-dime note. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting this pulled over here. There we go. All right, so this is assignment 4C, and we're going to revisit Mrs. Sowery's A-dime note so that you can continue to work on development of her PES statements. We'll look at these also on Tuesday night for possibilities. All right, and I would just remind you that every time you're writing the problem and the etiology portions, you must use the standardized terminology list that I provided in Blackboard. Checkpoint number 2 is due on Saturday, as are the assignments, and that's everything for this week. I'll see you by Zoom on Tuesday evening at 6:30. Have a great week.